Last Tuesday, my mother sat me down and calmly demanded that I decline my dream engineering internship to become my sister's full-time caretaker. She reminded me that I was strong and that I could handle it, while my sister, Lily, was fragile. I spent years sacrificing my childhood and my mental health for that family, but the final blow didn't come from my mother's words. It came from watching my sister Lily's face, seeing that little smirk as she realized my entire future was being traded for her comfort. And that was the exact moment I realized I had to burn down my place in that family to save myself. Before we get into the details of exactly how I finally broke free, let me know in the comments. Where are you watching this from? And what time is it there right now? I always love seeing where this community is tuning in from. My name is Megan Thornton. 3 days. For 3 days, my grandfather lay in a hospital bed calling my name. And for 3 days, my father stood outside that room telling everyone the same lie. She's not welcome here. He doesn't want her. Every nurse, every doctor, every person who asked, the same answer. I didn't know any of it until a stranger called me at 3 in the morning. I had just finished a 12-hour night shift. The quiet kind of shift that leaves your bones heavy. Evergreen senior living smelled like antiseptic and lavender lotion. Mrs. Abernathy liked the lavender. She said it reminded her of her garden. By the time I left the building, it was almost 3 a.m. The streets of Millfield were empty. My car had been dead for 2 weeks. Alternator gone, parts delayed, so I walked 22 minutes from Evergreen to the house my grandfather built. Oak floors, hand-cut window sills, 40 years of work pressed into the walls. The place still smelled like sawdust and coffee, even with him gone. My phone buzzed as I stepped inside. Unknown number. Local area code. 3 in the morning. Calls like that rarely bring good news. Still, something made me answer. Is this Megan Thornton? A woman's voice. Older, careful. Yes. My name is Patty. I'm a nurse at Memorial Hospital. My stomach dropped. Your grandfather asked for you. The words came out quickly. 3 days he's been asking for you. I gripped the counter. That can't be right. My dad said he was sleeping. A pause. Then Patty spoke again. He's not sleeping. And the person telling you that isn't being honest. The line went silent. I stood there for a moment. Kitchen lights humming overhead. My grandfather's empty chair at the table. My father had told me everything was fine. Stable, resting, every day this week. I grabbed my phone and called him. Voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. 3rd call, he answered. Megan. His voice wasn't sleepy. It was controlled. A nurse just called me, I said. She said Grandpa needs me. Silence. Then his voice hardened. No one was supposed to call you. The sentence landed like a warning. Dad, is Grandpa okay? He's resting, but I'm handling everything. His tone turned sharp. You don't need to come here. Then he hung up. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. My father had a particular voice, the voice he used when he was hiding something. I had heard it before, just not like this. Rosa picked me up 15 minutes later. Her Corolla smelled like pine air freshener and menthol cigarettes. What's going on? She asked. I'm not sure yet, but I knew one thing. My father had lied. Memorial Hospital at 3:30 in the morning felt hollow. Fluorescent lights, empty corridors, machines beeping somewhere down the hall. Room 412. I saw my father before I reached the door, arms crossed, blocking the entrance. My stepmother Brenda sat nearby holding a coffee cup. He watched me walk toward him. What are you doing here? I'm here to see Grandpa. He tilted his head slightly. Then he said 5 words I will never forget. He wants to see real family. The hallway went quiet. My chest tightened. My grandfather raised me, I said calmly. He asked for me. You're not on the visitor list. He tapped the door frame. I made sure of that. A nurse approached with a clipboard. My father smiled politely. She's not approved. The nurse checked, then looked at me apologetically. I'm sorry. The monitor inside the room beeped steadily. 10 feet away. My grandfather was dying, and I couldn't reach him. I stepped back, not arguing, not shouting, just thinking. That's when someone touched my shoulder. I turned, silver hair, sharp eyes, nurse's badge. Come with me, she whispered. It was Patty, the voice from the phone. She led me through a side corridor, past a supply closet, around a corner, another door, same room, different entrance. She looked directly at me. For 3 days he thought you abandoned him. My chest tightened again. He cries every night. Your father told him you didn't want to come. Something inside me went still. Not rage, something colder, understanding. Patty opened the door quietly. My grandfather looked smaller than I remembered. Oxygen tube, IV line, hands that once held hammers now resting on the blanket. His eyes opened. When he saw me, they filled with tears. Maggie, he whispered. I took his hand. I'm here. His fingers closed around mine. Weak, but certain. I thought you left. I never would. He watched me for a moment. Then his eyes sharpened slightly, like a carpenter checking an angle. I knew something was wrong, he said quietly. His eyes shifted toward the nightstand. Open the drawer. Patty stepped forward and pulled out a small silver flip phone. Old, scratched, the kind you'd forget about. Your grandfather gave this to me 3 days ago, Patty said, right after your father took his regular phone. Grandpa looked at me again. I recorded everything. My hand tightened around the phone. Everything. There are 7 recordings. I opened the file list. 7 voice memos. The first one dated 5 days ago. "Press play," he said. I did. My father's voice filled the room. Clear, cold. "Listen to me, old man. You're signing that house over today." The recording crackled softly. Then my grandfather's voice. Weak. "That house belongs to Megan." A pause. Then my father again. "If you don't sign it, I'll move you somewhere no one visits." My stomach turned. I stopped the recording. My grandfather watched me carefully. "There are 6 more," he said. "Listen to all of them. Then do what I can't do anymore." I looked down at the phone. 7 recordings. And suddenly, I understood something very clearly. My father believed he controlled the story, but the truth was already recorded. And once the truth exists, it only needs the right moment to be heard. I didn't listen to the rest of the recordings right away. Instead, I looked at my grandfather. His eyes were closed again, but his hand was still wrapped loosely around mine, like he was holding on to something steady. "Play them later," he whispered. "Just know what he's been doing." I nodded. "I will." Patty adjusted the IV quietly. Then she leaned closer to me. "He comes here every morning at 8, she said, "like clockwork." I glanced at the wall clock. 5:47 a.m. Just over 2 hours. 2 hours before my father walked back through that door. 2 hours to decide what happened next. I moved to the chair beside the bed, the flip phone still in my hand, and I started listening. Recording 2. My father pacing the room, his voice low but sharp. "Once he signs, we sell the house." Brenda's voice answered through the speaker. "What about Megan?" A pause, then my father again. "She won't matter." Recording 3. My grandfather asking quietly, "Did Megan call today?" My father answering immediately. "She said she's busy." My stomach tightened because I had called every single day. Recording 4. Paper rustling. "Power of attorney," my father said. "Just sign it." My grandfather's voice trembling. "I want to talk to Megan first." "You don't need her," my father replied. "She doesn't care." Recording 5. A chair scraping across the floor. My father again. "If you don't sign this, I'll walk out that door and never come back." Silence. Then my grandfather's voice. "Then go." Recording 6. This one was different. A phone call. My father speaking to a bank, using my grandfather's name, his social security number, requesting a transfer. $4,800 into an account that didn't belong to my grandfather. Recording 7. My father speaking to a nurse. "She has mental health issues. She agitates the patient." Do not let her visit. I lowered the phone slowly. 7 recordings, 7 pieces of proof. My father threatening a dying man, stealing from him, and trying to erase me from the room entirely. I pulled out my own phone. First thing, I copied every recording, then emailed them to myself. 2 backups, because evidence only matters if it survives. Next, I opened my grandfather's banking app. He had added me to the account last year. Just in case, he said at the time. The balance stared back at me. $33,200. $3 months earlier, it had been $47,000. $14,000 gone. 4 transfers, each one under $5,000. Carefully structured. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. I took screenshots. Every transaction, every routing number, every date. Then I emailed those 2. Backup. Always backup. Patty knocked softly. Son, S almost up. She glanced toward the hallway. You should leave before he arrives. I nodded. This wasn't the moment for confrontation. This was the moment for procedure. I squeezed my grandfather's hand gently. I'll be back. His eyes opened slightly. You're my girl, he whispered. I know what you'll do. I left through the same side corridor. Rosa was waiting in the cafeteria. Coffee in one hand, muffin in the other. You look like you didn't sleep, she said. I didn't. I sat down across from her. What happened? I placed the flip phone on the table. My father tried to steal my grandfather's house. She stared at me. You serious? Yes, and I have proof. My phone buzzed. Derek, I answered. You were in his room last night. Not a question. You told everyone I wasn't allowed in. You are. I stayed calm. I visited my grandfather. A pause. Then his voice lowered, the voice from the recordings. Listen carefully, Megan. You live in that house. That house is about to belong to me. If you want somewhere to sleep next month, I'd rethink your attitude. I said nothing, but my phone was recording the call. Ohio only required one person to know the recording existed. And that person was me. He kept talking. He's confused, my father continued. Old men say things. Nobody will believe him. I finally answered. I don't need belief. I just need the truth. Then I hung up. Rosa stared at me across the table. Your dad just threatened you. Yes. What are you going to do? I took a sip of burnt cafeteria coffee. Then I opened the elder abuse hotline on my phone. I'm going to follow procedure. First call, Adult Protective Services. Voicemail. I left a detailed report. Names, dates, evidence. Second call, non-emergency police line. The dispatcher listened carefully. An elder abuse detective will contact you today, she said. third call came 10 minutes later. Detective Linda Harland. Her voice was direct. You said you have recordings. Yes, and financial documentation. Meet me at the hospital this afternoon. I hung up and leaned back in the chair. For 3 days, my father had controlled the story. But stories collapse quickly when evidence enters the room. Rosa watched me carefully. You look different, she said. How? Calm. I nodded, because anger is loud, but planning is quiet. And right now, I was planning. Detective Linda Harland arrived just after noon. She didn't look dramatic. No raised voice. No sudden urgency. Just a short woman in a dark blazer carrying a small notebook and a recorder. The kind of person who had seen this situation before. Many times. We met in a small conference room near the nurses' station. I placed 3 things on the table: the flip phone, my phone, and a printed sheet of bank transactions. That's everything, I said. Harland nodded. Let's start with the recordings. She listened to the first one without interrupting. Then the second. Her pen moved steadily across the page. When the third recording finished, she paused the audio. Ohio is a one-party consent state, she said. Your grandfather was part of those conversations. So these recordings are legal evidence. She pushed the phone back toward me. That's important. Then she looked at the bank statements. 4 withdrawals, each one under $5,000, carefully spaced apart. Structured transfers, she said quietly. Someone knew the reporting limits. She circled one number. This account ending in 8841. Is that your grandfather S? No. I've memorized all of his accounts. She nodded once. That's good. Then she closed her notebook. I'm opening an elder financial exploitation case today. We walked back into room 412 together. My grandfather looked tired, but alert. Detective Harland introduced herself gently. Mr. Thornton, I'm investigating some concerns about your finances. Grandpa nodded slowly. I was hoping someone would. For 20 minutes, he explained everything. The papers my father kept bringing, the pressure, the threats, the missing money. Harland recorded every word. When he finished, she stood. You did the right thing documenting this, she said. Grandpa glanced at me. That phone was her idea. It hadn't been, but I understood why he said it. Harland gave me a quick look. Then she nodded. Smart thinking. Outside the room, she spoke quietly. This investigation will move forward quickly. What happens next? First, a temporary protective order. That prevents your father from controlling medical decisions. Second, the bank will freeze any suspicious accounts. And third, she paused. Your father will be interviewed. I understood what that meant. the story he had been telling people would start to crack. Later that afternoon, I saw him again. Derek stood outside the hospital elevator shaking hands with Dr. Fan, my grandfather's oncologist. "I just want the best care possible for my dad," Derek was saying. His voice trembled slightly. Convincing. Practiced. Dr. Fan nodded sympathetically. "Your father is lucky to have you." I watched from around the corner. The performance was flawless until the doctor walked away. Then Derek's expression changed completely, like a mask sliding off. He leaned toward Brenda. "She got into the room last night." Brenda's voice tightened. "What are we going to do?" "He'll sign today," Derek said quietly. "He's too weak to keep fighting." They entered room 412. I stayed in the hallway. 10 minutes later, Derek came back out and saw me. We stared at each other across the floor. His jaw tightened. "You think you've won something," he said. "I haven't started yet." Then he walked past me. Brenda followed silently. Inside the room, my grandfather was lying on his side, facing the window. His eyes were closed, but I could see the tears running down his cheek. I pulled the chair closer, didn't say anything, just sat beside him. Sometimes silence is the only thing that doesn't hurt. After a few minutes, he spoke. He asked again today to sign the house over. "What did you say?" Grandpa opened his eyes slowly. "The same thing I always say." "No." That night I went home, and for the first time in days, I opened social media. Derek's post was already spreading across town. Blue background, white text, praying hands emoji. "Please keep my father Harold Thornton in your prayers. Our family is going through a difficult time. We will be hosting a prayer vigil this Saturday evening. Grace Community Church." 7 p.m. comments flooded the post. "You're such a devoted son. Harold is lucky to have you. We're praying for your family." Not one person mentioned me. Then Mrs. Stevens commented, "How is Megan doing?" Derek replied almost immediately, "Megan is going through some personal struggles right now. Respecting her space." I read that sentence 3 times. He wasn't just lying. He was building a story, one where I was unstable, absent, unreliable, and he was the devoted son holding everything together. I closed the app and leaned back in my chair. The church vigil would be full. This town loved my grandfather. More than 100 people would show up, all of them believing Derek's version of the story. Unless something changed, I picked up the flip phone again. 7 recordings. Proof. Truth. Quiet, unavoidable truth. The kind that doesn't need shouting, only timing. Saturday night, Grace Community Church. 1 microphone. 1 room full of people who respected my grandfather. And 1 moment where the truth could finally speak for itself. I placed the phone carefully on the desk. Then I started preparing. Because revenge isn't loud, it's patient. And Saturday night was was coming. Saturday evening arrived quietly. No thunder, no dramatic feeling in the air, just a normal sunset over Millfield. The kind of evening my grandfather liked to sit on the porch and watch. I stood in the kitchen of his house with the folder on the table. Inside it were the bank statements, printed, organized, every transaction circled. The flip phone rested beside them. 7 recordings, 7 pieces of truth. I copied the files onto a USB drive as well. Evidence survives when it exists in more than one place. That was something nursing had taught me. Document everything. Always. Grace Community Church stood on the corner of Maple and 3rd. White wooden walls. Tall, narrow windows. My grandfather built the pews inside back in 1994. Sanded each one by hand. There was a small brass plate on the back row. Donated by Harold Thornton. For the community he loved. The parking lot was already full when I arrived. Pickup trucks, old sedans, minivans. Millfield didn't have many events. But when something happened to someone respected, people showed up. Inside the church, nearly every seat was taken. Candles lined the windows. Soft organ music filled the room. I recognized faces everywhere. Neighbors, teachers, men who had worked with my grandfather years ago. Aunt Ruth sat in the 3rd row, tissue already in her hand. Pastor Coleman stepped to the pulpit. His voice was steady. Tonight we gather for Harold Thornton. He spoke about the houses my grandfather helped build, the roofs he repaired for free, the way he taught young men how to hold a hammer properly. People nodded. Some wiped their eyes. Then Derek stood up. Navy suit, carefully loosened tie, eyes slightly red. He walked to the microphone. My father is the greatest man I've ever known. His voice wavered, perfectly measured. When he got sick, I dropped everything. I came home because that's what family does. People murmured in agreement. Derek looked around the room. Family stands together. And tonight, he gestured toward the audience. Family is here. Soft applause followed. Sincere, supportive. Exactly what he had planned. The back door opened, quietly. At first, no one noticed. Then someone turned, then another. Whispers moved slowly through the room. I walked down the center aisle, jeans, gray sweater, hair tied back, the folder in my left hand, the phone in my right. Derek saw me halfway down the aisle. His smile froze, not gone, just stuck. Like a mask someone forgot how to wear. I reached the front of the church. Pastor Coleman looked at me carefully. Megan, he said softly, I'd like to say something about my grandfather. Coleman glanced at Derek. Derek nodded. He had to. Refusing would have raised too many questions. We switched places at the microphone. As Derek passed me, he whispered under his breath, Don't do anything stupid. I looked at him calmly. I'm not the stupid one. I turned toward the room. More than 100 faces looked back. People who had known my grandfather their whole lives. People who trusted my father. People who deserved the truth. My grandfather is in a hospital bed tonight, I began. And for 3 days, he believed I abandoned him. The room went still. Not because I left, because someone told him I did. A few confused glances moved through the crowd. I lifted the phone. My grandfather prepared something before he got too weak. Derek stepped forward quickly. Megan, you're upset. I raised one hand, not aggressively, just enough to stop him. I'm not finished. I pressed play. The recording filled the church. Clear, sharp. My father's voice echoed through the room. You're going to sign that house over today. If you do, I'll move you somewhere nobody visits. The room froze. Someone gasped. I played the second recording, then the third, each one louder than the silence growing in the pews. Derek lunged toward the microphone. Turn that off. That's fake. He was confused. A voice rose from the third row. Derek. Aunt Ruth stood slowly, her hands trembling. That is your voice. Pastor Coleman placed a firm hand on Derek's shoulder. Sit down. Derek looked around the room, searching for someone, anyone, who still believed him. But the faces he saw weren't supportive anymore. They were shocked, disappointed. Some were angry. Mrs. Stevens stood up next. Megan was the one mowing Harold's lawn every week. Where were you, Derek? Pete Garland rose from the back row. Harold told me someone took his credit card last month. I thought he was confused. He looked directly at Derek. He was. The room shifted, slowly, but completely. Derek's shoulders dropped. The mask finally broke. Brenda grabbed his arm. We need to go. They pushed through the side door and disappeared into the night. The church stayed silent for several seconds. Then I stepped back to the microphone. My grandfather built this church's pews. He built houses across this town, and he deserved better than what happened to him. I paused. That's all I wanted to say. When I stepped away from the pulpit, the room filled with movement. People approached quietly. Mrs. Stevens hugged me first. Pete Garland shook my hand. Aunt Ruth cried openly. Pastor Coleman spoke softly. If you need anything from this church, you tell me. Outside, Rosa waited in her car. When I got inside, she looked at me. Well, I leaned back against the seat. The truth spoke. The church lights faded behind us as we drove away. And for the first time in 5 days, I could breathe again. Sunday morning felt different. Not because the town had changed overnight, but because the silence around the truth had finally broken. When I arrived at Memorial Hospital, the front desk nurse recognized me immediately. She didn't check a clipboard. She simply nodded. "Go ahead, Megan. Room 412. No one blocked the doorway. No one stood in the hallway pretending to protect something they never earned. I pushed the door open slowly. My grandfather was awake, weaker, but awake. When he saw me, something warm moved behind his eyes. "Meggie," he whispered. I sat beside him. "I went to the church last night." His hand shifted slightly on the blanket. "You told them?" "Yes." "And?" I squeezed his fingers gently. "They heard the truth." For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then the faintest smile appeared. "Good." I told him everything. The recordings playing in the church. The way the room went quiet. The moment people realized what had been happening. I kept my voice calm. No anger. No dramatic details. Just the facts. My grandfather listened with his eyes half closed. When I finished, he spoke slowly. "I built that house for the one who stayed." I shook my head. "I didn't do any of this for the house." "I know." He opened his eyes again. "That's why you deserve it." Monday morning, the phone rang. "Detective Harland." "The case is moving forward," she said. "The bank confirmed the transfers. $14,000. Structured withdrawals." I wrote everything down in a notebook, just like charting patient notes at work. Facts, dates, outcomes. "Your father is being formally charged," she continued. "Financial exploitation of the elderly, identity fraud for the bank transfers, and intimidation." I thanked her. Then I sat quietly for a moment after the call ended. The law would handle the rest now. Justice didn't need my voice anymore. Later that afternoon, Brenda called. I almost didn't answer. "You didn't have to do this publicly," she said. Her voice was shaking. "We're family." I leaned back in the kitchen chair. "I didn't break this family. Derek did." A long silence followed. Then she spoke again. "He lost his job months ago. We were drowning." "I know, but drowning doesn't give you the right to pull someone else under." The call ended shortly after. 3 days later, Kyle showed up at the house, a backpack over his shoulder. Eyes tired. "Mom kicked me out," he said quietly, "because I said I believed you." I stepped aside. "Come in." He walked through the living room slowly, looking around, like someone entering a place they had heard about but never seen. "This is the house Dad tried to take," he said. "Yes." Kyle ran his hand across the cherrywood desk my grandfather built for me when I was 12. The grain was smooth from years of use. "He made this." "He did." Kyle nodded slowly. "I think Grandpa would have liked this house staying with you." I smiled slightly. "I think so too." Thursday morning, the hospital called. I already knew what the call meant. Kyle drove without asking questions. The sunrise barely touched the road. Room 412 was quiet when we arrived. Aunt Ruth stood in the hallway. She had driven through the night. Inside the room, my grandfather looked peaceful. The oxygen tube gone. The machines silent. When I took his hand, his eyes opened just slightly, enough to recognize us. "Full house," he whispered. Ruth took his other hand. Kyle stood at the foot of the bed. My grandfather looked at each of us once. Then his eyes settled on me. Not sadness, not fear, just certainty. The monitor sounded one long tone, and then it was quiet. 3 weeks later, I stood on the porch of the house he built. Oak floors, carved window sills, everything exactly the way he left it. His will had been signed 2 years earlier, witnessed, notarized, clear. The house belonged to me, not because I fought for it, because he had already decided. In the margin beside my name, he wrote one sentence: "For Meggie, who stayed." Derek's arraignment happened the following month. Financial exploitation, identity fraud. The charges spoke for themselves. I didn't attend. The truth had already done its work. Life slowly returned to something steady. Kyle started working at the coffee shop downtown. He came by every Thursday evening. We usually ate at the cherrywood desk. It worked just as well as a dining table. Sometimes Aunt Ruth joined us on Sundays. She brought pie. We told stories about Grandpa, his terrible jokes, his stubbornness. The way he insisted oatmeal with brown sugar was a complete meal. I still worked the night shift at Evergreen. I still walked home at 3 in the morning. And every time I opened the door, the house smelled the same. Sawdust, coffee, quiet. The kind of quiet that meant something solid still stood. My father tried to take that away, but my grandfather had prepared for that too. Not with anger, not with violence, just with the truth. And sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is simply refuse to let the truth disappear.